My roommate was drunk and heartbroken, so I was giving her a ride home on my scooter when a Mercedes behind us gently tapped our back tire. My roommate glanced at the license plate and asked me quietly, "You need money lately?" I answered honestly, "I always need money." She nodded, then just flopped right off the back of the scooter. As she went down, she managed to say, "I'm about to make you rich." Just then, the Mercedes door opened, and a handsome guy in a perfectly tailored suit stepped out. We just stared at each other. With graduation just around the corner, my roommate and her boyfriend quietly broke up. My beautiful, heartbroken roommate got completely wasted and called me, begging for a ride home. As I drove her home on my little electric scooter, she alternated between giving me directions and listing off all the terrible things her scumbag ex had done. I tried my best to comfort her while keeping my eyes on the road. I had to admit, for someone who was blackout drunk, she was leading me through some beautiful scenery. I looked around at the fancy neighborhood and couldn't help but ask, "Hey, you moron, aren't we heading into that gated community up ahead? Are you sure you know where we're going?" She was draped over my back and mumbled after a moment, "You know. I was his rose. He watered me. How can I live without him?" Okay, my little drama queen. You just keep wallowing." My roommate was completely out of it, so I couldn't count on her. Something felt off, so I pulled over to the curb, propped up the scooter, and opened my Maps app to figure out where we were. Suddenly, a force slammed into my beloved scooter, and my phone went flying from my hand. My phone. A shattered phone was just the icing on the cake for my already broke self. I whipped my head around angrily and saw an all-black Mercedes that had gently bumped into us. I was about to get off and check on my poor, deceased phone and have a word with the driver. But my roommate shot up as if jolted from a coma, stared at the license plate, and thought for a long moment. Then she suddenly asked, "You need money lately?" "Seriously? What do you mean lately? Have you not noticed we've been living on ramen noodles this whole time? You should know I'm always broke." I answered honestly, "I always need money." My roommate nodded. Then I watched as she slowly slid sideways and fell stiffly onto the pavement right next to the Mercedes, adding, "Get ready to be rich." "Aren't you moved?" "Moved? Are you kidding me? I'm too scared to move a muscle, you idiot." What was happening? If you're going to pull an insurance scam, at least give me a heads up. I'm a terrible actor. As I stood there awkwardly, not knowing what to do with my hands or feet, the Mercedes door opened. The first thing I saw was a pair of long legs stepping firmly onto the pavement. Then, a man in a full suit walked toward us. He radiated an icy cold pressure, his face devoid of any warmth. His sharp features and tall frame were incredibly intimidating. I gulped and knelt, desperately shaking my roommate, who was still playing dead on the ground. "Get up, you idiot. You tried to scam the wrong guy. If you don't get up now, I think he might actually murder me." A shadow fell over me. I looked up and met his condescending, judgmental gaze. "Get up. Don't make me say it twice." His voice was deep, with a tone that tolerated no argument. Nice car, handsome face, great voice, yep, this was a CEO type right out of a drama. I was terrified. I mean, sure, he was the one who hit my scooter, so he was technically at fault. But my idiot roommate trying to fake an accident was definitely not okay. Seeing as she was still committed to her unconscious act, I had no choice but to bite the bullet and be honest. Excuse me, sir. We're not trying to extort you. She's just really drunk." Before I could finish, he frowned, leaned down, and sniffed her gently. He let out a short, sharp laugh, as if he was both furious and amused. "Well, look at you, Lauren. You're drinking now. What was going on?" He knew my roommate. Seeing my shocked expression, the CEO type turned to me and said politely, "I'm sorry, my driver wasn't paying attention and bumped your scooter. I'm Lauren's brother. Leo." His tone was still just as cold. "What?" This stone-faced, intimidating guy was my idiot roommate's brother? Which meant my idiot roommate. I glanced at my dramatic friend lying on the ground next to my shattered phone, and a tear of pure envy rolled down my cheek. Ugh, you're secretly rich and you never told me? I took a deep breath and said to her brother, it's no problem. She was drunk and asked me to bring her home. Leo nodded slightly. He thanked me and was about to pick her up when my dear, rich friend suddenly came back to life, grabbing my hand and refusing to let go. She started mumbling, you're leaving me, wah. Abandoning me while I'm drunk. You even bought your scooter with my money. I did not. That's not me. Don't say that. I saved up for my scooter by living on instant noodles. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Leo giving me a questioning look. Damn it. I wanted to explain that she was talking about her ex-boyfriend, but I had no idea if she'd even told her brother she was dating anyone. I was stuck, unable to defend myself. The three of us were trapped in a bizarrely awkward moment. Leo was holding her, she was holding me, and I wanted to die. But Leo was clearly used to handling complicated situations. After a moment's thought, he took us all back to his place. He even had my scooter and phone packed up and brought along. The second I walked in the door, I was practically blinded by the sheer luxury of the place. It was massive. So this is how the other half lives? Holy crap. But even though the house was huge, it felt strangely empty. I snuck a look around and realized there wasn't a single housekeeper in sight. Thank you for bringing Lauren home. Leo gently placed my roommate on a bed, straightened his suit, and extended a hand to me. And you are? I hesitated for a second, then shook his hand briefly. Kathy. I'm her roommate. Leo nodded. He was so tall, and I was standing so close, that all I could see from this angle was his sharp, chiseled jawline. It's too late for you to go home now. Please, stay here for the night, Kathy. As for your scooter and phone. Leo glanced at the shattered phone in my hand, his expression unreadable. I'll have someone take care of them. He was talking about my scooter and broken phone. I nodded. Leo turned to leave, but just as he reached the doorway, my roommate let out a tearful whimper. Mom. Then she started mumbling drunkenly. Leo stopped in his tracks. He stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the light from the living room, completely silent. The light cast his shadow long across the floor. For such a tall man, his back suddenly looked incredibly lonely. He stood there for what felt like an eternity before turning and walking away without another word, leaving me alone in the room with the passed-out Lauren. Why did he seem so sad? The question lingered in my mind, but I didn't dwell on it. After cleaning Lauren up, I collapsed onto the bed, exhausted. Even as I lay there, the whole night felt like a dream. My roommate, the one who ate instant noodles with me every day, was secretly a rich girl, and she tried to pull a scam on her own brother. How bizarre is that? I drifted off to sleep thinking about it. I woke up to Lauren's blood-curdling scream, holy crap, Kathy, how did I get home? I buried my head in the blankets, my brain still refusing to function. Your brother brought you back, I mumbled. Lauren let out a wail of despair. Oh God, my brother? No wonder I thought I recognized his license plate. Well. So you knew it was your brother's car. That's why you were so bold. Here I was thinking you had a death wish. She ran her hands through her hair. Please tell me I didn't say anything embarrassing. Her words instantly brought back the image of Leo standing alone and heartbroken in the doorway. I was wide awake. I sat up and looked at her, who was still moaning in despair. I couldn't help but want to laugh. What do you mean by embarrassing? Lauren buried her head in the pillows. You know, all that drama about my ex. It's so humiliating. Oh, that. Yeah, you said plenty about that, my little drama queen. When she saw I wasn't answering, she started shaking me. I threw my hands up in surrender. Nope, not a word. I covered your mouth the whole time. She put her hands together in a prayer pose. My hero. Thank you. Speaking of which, I pulled her out from under the covers. You little liar. Didn't you tell me your brother dropped out after high school to get a job? Lauren looked at me with perfect sincerity. He did. He started his own company right after high school. Then she muttered, he's doing pretty well for himself now. Are you kidding me? You call that getting a job? You call this pretty well? I gave her a genuine thumbs up. Well, since you're awake, I should probably get going. Lauren immediately grabbed me. Wait. You don't have a place to stay for the summer, right? Why don't you just stay here with me? I stared at her, shocked. She really was my best friend. We were on the exact same wavelength. I'd actually been planning to ask her if she wanted to rent an apartment with me for the summer, since our internships were near each other. But this situation was a little unexpected. Her brother was still here. It would be awkward for me to stay. She must have seen my hesitation because she quickly added, don't worry, my brother is almost never here. If you don't stay, I'll be all alone in this huge house. It'll be so depressing. Ugh, you and your humble bragging. Lauren started putting on a pathetic act. You know how scared I get when I'm all alone. I thought about it for a second. Are there really no other people in your house? Like a housekeeper or something? The place was massive, but it was completely empty. Lauren looked confused. No. When I'm at the dorm, it's just my brother here. He doesn't like having staff around. That lonely image of his back flashed through my mind again. I shook my head to clear the thought. I mean, I'm okay with it, but you have to ask your brother. Before I could finish, she was dragging me downstairs. We have to hurry. He's about to leave for the office. She pulled me so fast I nearly face-planted. By the time we got downstairs, Leo was already sitting at the dining table, looking like he'd been waiting for a while. Lauren pulled me into a chair next to her. Leo's cool gaze swept over us, his voice a little stuffy from a cold. Explain. Since when do you drink? Lauren gave a forced laugh. Well, it's graduation season, you know? The sorrow of parting. Leo snorted, clearly not buying it. You're graduating this year? Lauren shot me a desperate look, frantically signaling me with her eyes. Damn it, this girl never gives me time to rehearse. I cleared my throat and lied with a straight face. Yes. The seniors in our lab were graduating. We're all close, so we had a little to drink. Leo's deep-set eyes stared at me as if trying to see right through me. I smiled back at him calmly, but inside, my heart was about to explode. He was scarier than the strictest dean of discipline from my high school. Just when I thought he was going to press further, he dropped it. Let's eat, he said calmly, as if he hadn't just been playing the role of the stern patriarch. I let out a sigh of relief. Lauren secretly gave me a thumbs up. I'd barely taken 2 bites when Lauren, my half-wit roommate, piped up again. Bro, Kathy isn't going home for the summer. Can she stay here with me? As soon as she said it, Leo's eyes fell on me. He thought for a moment before answering. Fine. He continued eating slowly. In that case, I won't be coming back much. Call me if you have any problems. Lauren openly gave me a V for victory sign and then started gushing to her brother. You know, Kathy is a genius. She's the only brainiac in our dorm. She's loved astrophysics since she was a kid and actually enjoys studying it. She paused for emphasis. I mean, it's physics. That was because our dorm rooms were mixed major. My field was different from theirs, but everyone was pretty brilliant in their own area of study. Leo seemed genuinely interested. You've always liked it? I thought for a moment and answered honestly. Not always. There was a time when I really struggled with it. Lauren looked at me with admiration. When Kathy struggles, she just keeps studying until she likes it again. Me? I struggle, and then I fail the class. I couldn't help but laugh at her dramatic expression. Lauren pretended to be an interviewer. So, tell us, how did you overcome the difficulty and fall in love with astrophysics? It was no big deal. I gathered my thoughts and tried to be concise. It's actually a pretty cliché story. I met this expert online who taught me a lot, and I slowly started to love learning again. Leo nodded slightly and asked, "And now?" I said firmly, "It's my life's passion." Lauren nodded excitedly and showed him my keychain. She really loves it. Her keychain is even a model of Pluto. When she held up the charm, Leo froze. He suddenly went still, his eyes fixed on my keychain. His expression was incredibly complex, and his brows furrowed slightly. I looked at Lauren, confused. She calmly explained that her brother's latest project involved this field, so he gets excited hearing about it. Oh, okay. That explained why he suddenly had so much to say when he heard I studied astrophysics. That keychain. Was it a gift from that expert you mentioned? Leo spoke suddenly, his voice a little unsteady, with a hint of excitement. Curiosity got the better of me. Hey, how did you know? Back in my freshman year, I used to vent on a niche physics forum all the time. That expert drew it for me to cheer me up. After I stopped using the site, I printed it out and made it into a keychain to remember him by. Lauren perked up at the mention of this and poked me playfully. Oh yeah, she treasures it. Damn it. Ever since I told her about it, she's been teasing me, calling the keychain my physics first love. I suddenly felt a little shy. I glanced up and accidentally met Leo's complex gaze. He still looked expressionless, even cold, but for some reason, I felt like the ice in his eyes was starting to melt. My suspicion was confirmed a second later when Lauren asked curiously, "Bro? Why are you so happy all of a sudden?" Leo lowered his gaze, his eyelashes casting a shadow. He casually picked up a wet wipe and slowly cleaned his hands, his voice betraying no emotion. "It's nothing. I just guessed right." His voice had a hint of warmth to it. He must have meant he guessed right about the expert giving me the keychain. But I was curious, how did he know at a glance? Was he psychic? Lauren was also confused. But how did you guess, bro? Good roommate. My very own internet spokesperson. Leo thought for a moment, then looked up at us and explained very seriously, context clues. What a simple answer. What a keen observer. Lauren rolled her eyes and muttered, "Fine, don't tell us." She whispered to me, "My brother loves being mysterious. He's such a closet romantic." Leo finished his meal and stood up to leave. As he reached the entryway, he seemed to remember something and turned back. "By the way, I just remembered, I'll be staying home for the summer, too." What? Didn't he just say he wouldn't be home? Why the sudden change of heart? Lauren also demanded, "Why? You just said you wouldn't be back." Leo was turned to the side, so I couldn't see his expression, only the slow curl of his lips into a smile. After a long pause, he said, "Because something important has come up." Even though Leo said he'd be staying home, for the first week I was there, it was just me and Lauren in the house. He probably didn't want to make me feel awkward. Aside from occasionally having food delivered for us, he was basically a ghost. That changed one day on my way home from my internship. I was riding a shared bike, took a spill, and hurt my leg badly enough that I had to call in sick and stay in bed for a few days. Lauren still had to go to her internship, leaving me all alone in that massive house. I was finally experiencing the depressing feeling she'd talked about. I was binge-watching shows, bored out of my mind, when I heard footsteps outside my door. The person was hesitating, pacing back and forth but not coming in. Lying on the couch, I could sense their indecision. It had to be my idiot roommate, home from her internship and trying to scare me. She pulled stunts like this all the time. I limped, crawling ominously toward the door, ready to fling it open and give her a taste of her own medicine. But when I threw the door open, I came face to face with Leo. He had his hand raised, about to knock, and a rare, bewildered look on his face. Paired with my ridiculous commando crawl, the scene was beyond bizarre. Crap. Why was it Leo? How could I possibly explain this? He must think I'm a complete lunatic. The silence between us was deafening. I scrambled to my feet, a dozen excuses running through my head, but all I could manage was, "Gee, good afternoon." At that, Leo blinked, and a flicker of a smile appeared in his eyes. His deep voice, seemingly trying to hold back laughter, floated down from above me. "Yes, good afternoon." It didn't sound nearly as cold as usual. I was so embarrassed I could have dug a hole and buried myself in it. Leo broke the silence. "Lauren told me you were hurt. I came back to bring you some medicine." Huh. Now that he mentioned it, I saw he was carrying a bag full of stuff that did, in fact, look like medicine. He looked like he had just come from a meeting. His suit was immaculate, but he had the weary look of someone who had rushed over. He held the bag out to me. I quickly reached for it, thanking him profusely. But the earlier shock must have been too much. As I stepped forward, I forgot I was half crippled. My leg gave out, and my body pitched forward. Seriously, I'd made a fool of myself twice in one day. I was on a roll. One more time and I was ready to leave this beautiful world behind. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for a humiliating face plant on the floor. Instead, I heard a soft grunt next to my ear and felt something completely different from the hard floor I was expecting. I opened my eyes and found myself staring into those perpetually calm eyes and a pair of slightly furrowed brows. For once, those placid eyes were filled with emotion. Oh my God. Holy crap. How did I fall into his arms? "Are you okay?" I heard Leo ask in his deep voice. I mumbled apologies and scrambled to get off him, but my leg was useless, my hand was throbbing from trying to catch my fall, and I was so flustered that I couldn't get any leverage. For a long moment, I could barely move. I was about to cry from my own stupidity. Just as I was about to try again, I heard a faint sigh from above me. "I'm sorry," he said softly. Then, before I could react, he swept me up into his arms and strode toward the living room sofa. He carried me as if I weighed nothing. I was pressed against his chest, and he wasn't even breathing hard. I was so mortified I didn't know where to put my hands. I pointed vaguely at a spot. You can just put me down here." He grunted in acknowledgement and said nothing more. I snuck a peek up at him and saw that his ears were actually red. It wasn't obvious, but on a man who radiated such a cold aura, it felt completely surreal. "Holy." A voice that wasn't ours echoed through the room. I was so startled I almost fell. The arms holding me tightened, pulling me closer. Then he turned, still holding me, so we could both face the source of the sound. And there we were, in the most awkward tableau imaginable. A tall man holding a shocked and mortified woman, both staring at another woman standing in the doorway holding a basket of groceries, equally stunned. Three faces, one shared expression of pure bewilderment. Oh my God, why did Lauren have to come home right now? Perfect. 3 strikes in one day. I could now depart this beautiful world in peace. Of the three of us, Leo was the calmest. He met Lauren's excited gaze, slowly set me down, and didn't even bother explaining. He just said, "You're home." Lauren finally snapped out of it. Her eyes darted between me and Leo a dozen times before landing on a conclusion. A huge, gossip-hungry grin spread across her face as she walked toward me. I think I just walked in on something juicy. I was mortified. Just as I was about to explain, Leo raised an eyebrow, crossed his arms, and leaned down toward her. She was about to fall, and I caught her. "Is there a problem?" Lauren immediately surrendered, fawning over him. "Nope, no problem at all." I glanced up at him and saw that he had returned to his usual stoic, Ice King persona, as if the guy with the red ears a moment ago had never existed. Leo must have felt my gaze because he suddenly looked over. I didn't look away in time, and our eyes met for a brief second. His dark irises were still unreadable, but the evening sun streamed through the open door, catching his handsome face and wrapping him in a golden glow. Wow. I quickly averted my eyes, my heart thumping uncontrollably. Leo straightened up and walked directly into the kitchen, rolling up his shirt sleeves. It looked like he was about to cook. I was a little stunned. Him? An ice sculpture? He could actually cook. Lauren suddenly leaned in close, her teasing voice whispering behind me, "Oh yeah, he can do a lot of things. Like what you see?" I whipped my head around to see her smug, all-knowing expression and realized with horror that I had asked my question out loud. I slapped a hand over my mouth and shot her a look, begging her to drop it. Lauren's grin only widened. She gave me a look. "Hey, my brother seems different around you." God, she was like a starved animal in a field of gossip, desperately sniffing out a story. I buried my face in my hands. It was really just an accident. Lauren shook her head, glancing at Leo bustling in the kitchen. No. My brother's a bit clueless. He rarely explains himself unless you ask him directly. But just now, he was watching you. He saw you looked uncomfortable, and he actually volunteered an explanation. I wanted to argue that he was just trying to spare us the awkwardness. Lauren cut me off, her eyes sparkling with excitement. And you two were staring at each other. My brother got nervous. Damn it, she'd noticed me accidentally locking eyes with him. But how could she tell he was nervous? The guy's face was a stone mask. Lauren had a look on her face like she was watching her favorite ship set sail. She leaned in and whispered, "He fiddles with the ring on his hand when he's nervous." Ring? I hadn't even noticed he wore a ring. Seeing my confusion, Lauren quickly clarified, "Whoa, don't get the wrong idea. So many people try to set him up that he just wears a ring to fend them off." That was a pretty smart move. While I was expressing my admiration, Lauren thought for a moment and then asked, "So, what do you think of my brother?" Whoa, why was she asking me that all of a sudden? The question brought back the image of Leo bathed in golden light, and my heart started to race again. I shook my head, trying not to overthink it, and was about to come up with some kind of answer. Lauren, observing my expression, had a sudden revelation. "Oh, I get it now. Just watch me." "Wait, I haven't even said anything." "What did you get, you crazy roommate?" I got my answer at the dinner table. Leo's cooking was surprisingly delicious. I marveled to myself that talented people really are good at everything. Lauren suddenly said, "Bro, you're not too busy lately, are you?" Leo grunted in acknowledgement, looking up to signal her to continue. I suddenly had a very bad feeling. Sure enough, in the next second, Lauren pointed at me. "Kathy's on leave because of her injury, and I'm about to leave for a field project. Could you pop over and check on her sometimes?" Oh my God, this was so awkward. How could I possibly agree to that? "Okay." No, you don't have to." Leo and I spoke at the same time, with completely different answers. Leo's hand, holding his chopsticks, froze. His lips tightened as he looked at me without a word. I explained, "It's really no trouble. It's just a minor injury. I'll be back at my internship in a few days." Leo gave me a slight nod and went back to eating, but the atmosphere suddenly felt a few degrees colder. Seeing this, Lauren's smile stretched from ear to ear. "Oh, it's fine. If you feel bad about it, you can help my brother out with some theory. His current project is really similar to your field of study." Oh great. With my half-baked knowledge, I didn't feel very confident about that. Leo glanced away, his long fingers unconsciously twisting his ring. He said nonchalantly, "The project isn't that difficult, but I could use a professional's input." Well, if it wasn't that hard. I thought about it. I really didn't have much to do lately. If I could actually help him, it would be a way to thank him for letting me stay here. So I nodded and said, "Just let me know whenever you need anything." Since Lauren was leaving for several days for a field study with her internship, we decided to pull an all-nighter and just talk. She told me a lot about their past, and I finally understood why Leo had stood outside the room for so long when she'd cried out for her parents. According to Lauren, their family went bankrupt right when he graduated high school. Their parents couldn't handle the shock and passed away in an accident. Leo had no choice but to give up college and start working to pay off the debts. They were only 2 years apart, but Leo insisted on working himself to the bone so his little sister could go to college. The image of Leo in my mind started to become more three-dimensional. He was no longer just a reserved man who seemed to have no emotions. The consequence of our late-night chat was that I didn't wake up until the next afternoon. Lauren was already gone. I was completely disoriented, my head foggy from sleep. In a daze, I heard someone moving around downstairs. I opened my door to peek and saw Leo cooking. I was leaning over the staircase railing, about to say hello, when I saw him, sleeves rolled up, methodically chopping something. The afternoon sun streamed in, bathing him in a warm glow that made him seem so much more real, so full of life. For some reason, I couldn't bring myself to break the peaceful scene. But Leo must have felt a little warm, because he unbuttoned his shirt with one hand. From my angle, I had a perfect view of his broad shoulders and the slightly open collar of his shirt. Crap. I covered my eyes, telling myself it was rude to stare. But I had to admit, Leo was incredibly handsome. That wasn't an exaggeration, his face was a masterpiece. Leo suddenly looked up. I didn't have time to look away and was caught red-handed. Because he was looking up, his usually sharp features seemed almost innocent. That stupid heart of mine started racing again. I steadied my voice, gave him a small smile, and waved. Good afternoon. Leo, however, didn't seem to react. He just kept looking at me. We were too far apart for me to read his expression. Oh no, did I scare him? I mean, it would be a little startling to look up and see someone staring at you. I cursed myself for being so shameless and staring for so long. Just as I was about to explain, Leo snapped back to reality, looked away, and glanced down at his hand with a blank expression. The next second, bright red blood bloomed across his white shirt. Oh my God. I rushed to go downstairs, but my leg was still bad, so I had to grip the railing and hobble down as fast as I could. Leo saw how anxious I was, casually grabbed a paper towel to press against the cut, and strode toward me. Where are you going? Let me help you. He reached out as if to support me. I stared in disbelief at the blood-soaked paper towel in his hand, and I was equally shocked by his logic. He was bleeding, and he was worried about helping me? I'm getting the first aid kit for you. There was still medicine left from my own scrape. He needed to stop the bleeding, but he was acting like it was nothing. If I were bleeding that much, I'd be screaming. I didn't care about politeness anymore. I grabbed his arm and limped us toward the living room sofa. My hands were shaking as I dug the medical supplies out of my bag and started cleaning his wound. The entire time, Leo was completely silent, just watching me as if I were tending to someone else's hand. Luckily, the cut wasn't too deep. As I was about to bandage it, I looked up at him. Does it hurt? If it does, I can. Before I could finish, Leo's calm voice cut in. It hurts. His face was still expressionless, but his eyes were gentle. Huh. That didn't match the person Lauren had described at all. According to her, her brother was the kind of tough guy who would swallow his own broken teeth, who never showed his emotions. But how could he not be in pain after getting cut? A mix of sympathy and guilt washed over me. I instinctively softened my voice. Okay, I'll be gentle. Don't be scared. Leo hummed in agreement, his gaze finally dropping to his wound. From the side, all I could see were his long eyelashes, hiding whatever emotions were in his eyes. I had no idea what he was thinking. After I finished bandaging his hand, I apologized sincerely. After all, he only got hurt because I startled him. Leo tugged at the bandage and looked at me with an amused expression. You didn't startle me, he explained. But he had clearly frozen up. Seeing I still looked guilty, Leo smiled at me, his eyes crinkling at the corners. It wasn't because of that. I asked dejectedly. Then what was it? My crestfallen expression and messy bedhead seemed to amuse him. The smile in his eyes grew wider. He said deliberately, because I was thinking of something happy. This guy was such a closet romantic. For someone so cold to make a joke like that. I had to admit, it was kind of cute. His smile threw me off. When Leo smiled, it was like watching ice melt into a cool, gentle stream. He didn't seem so intimidating anymore. Just as I was about to say something else, my stomach let out an embarrassing growl. Leo raised an eyebrow, his gaze falling on me. Hungry, I wanted to deny it, but the aroma wafting from the kitchen was too tempting. After a brief struggle, I nodded honestly. Leo helped me up. His voice had a cheerful lilt to it, and he seemed to be in a good mood. Go wash up. It's time to eat. After we ate, he had to leave for the office. It dawned on me that he had come back today just to cook a meal for me. As Leo was about to leave, I remembered something and called out to him. Hey, L. I stopped halfway. I couldn't say his name. I ran through a dozen different ways to address him in my head, but they all felt awkward, and I froze. Leo heard me and turned around, looking at me quizzically, waiting for me to continue. After a moment of internal struggle, I was about to just get to the point when Leo seemed to sense my predicament. Just call me by my name. He paused, then added, Lauren calls me that at home, too. He was so considerate. Even though I'd never actually heard Lauren call him by his first name, I knew he was just saying that to make me feel less awkward. So, Kathy. Was there something you needed? I snapped back to reality, stammering a little. Your hand. Be careful not to bump it. Leo, who had been about to adjust his tie, froze. He casually put the tie aside and said, okay. I slowly walked over to the window and watched his retreating back, my heart beating a little fast. The tie he had abandoned lay forlornly in the entryway. I stared at it for a moment, and then it hit me. Did Leo not put on his tie because I had just reminded him to be careful with his hand? For a second, my head was spinning. I was totally flustered. After that whole fiasco, things between Leo and me became less formal. He started coming home every afternoon to cook, and in the evenings, we would discuss his project. I discovered that when he was working, he was incredibly serious and almost ruthless. Sometimes I'd be sitting next to him looking up articles while he was in an online meeting, and every time he spoke, the temperature in the room would drop a few degrees. I got bolder and would sometimes mutter, so harsh. He'd look up from his computer, stare at me silently, and when he started giving instructions again, his tone would be noticeably softer. But when I was explaining theories to him, Leo listened with intense focus. His eyes would shine with a fervent light. For such a reserved person, he made no effort to hide his thirst for knowledge. It made me wonder, if he hadn't become a businessman, he would have made an excellent physicist. This routine continued even after my leg healed and I could go back to my internship. The original agreement was that he would look after me because I was injured. Now, I was fully recovered and had been back at work for days. But every time I came home and opened the door, Leo would be in the kitchen, look up, and say, "You're back." I would smile and reply, and neither of us ever mentioned going back to our old separate lives. It felt like we had both grown accustomed to this new rhythm. Until one day, I came home from work and the kitchen was empty. The dining table was covered with takeout containers, probably things he'd had delivered. The smile that had started to form on my face froze. I sighed, walked in, and flopped onto the sofa, feeling dejected. Lauren was right, and she was wrong. I wasn't sure if her brother liked me, but looking at the current situation, I was pretty sure I was starting to like him. I tossed and turned on the sofa, restless, waiting for a long time. I think I counted every single stitch on the cushions. I wanted to text him, but I felt like I had no right to. I was also afraid of bothering him at work. While I was debating, a notification from Leo popped up on my phone. It read, "Have a meeting tonight. You eat first. We can look at the data together when I get back later." Was he checking in with me? I tried to suppress the smile that was spreading across my face. The earlier disappointment vanished completely. I replied with an okay sticker and started rolling around on my bed. I didn't even know why I was so excited, but my mood was like a roller coaster. But my joy led to my downfall. These past few days, eating with Leo, I hadn't dared to eat as much as I wanted. Tonight, I indulged, and the consequence was that I ate so much I passed out immediately. When I woke up again, it was dark outside. A sense of dread washed over me. I shakily checked my phone and almost fainted. It was 2:30 a.m. Crap. I'd completely bailed on Leo. I'd slept straight through the evening. I ran a hand through my hair, dazed for a few seconds. On a whim, I slowly walked toward the study. I knew it was crazy. It was almost 3 in the morning. Leo was definitely asleep. As I got closer, my heart started to pound. I saw that the study door was slightly ajar, and a faint light was spilling out from the crack. I took a deep breath to calm myself and gently pushed the door open. A tall figure was sitting in a chair by the floor-to-ceiling window. The dim light from a desk lamp cast him in a soft glow, creating a stark contrast with the surrounding darkness. Leo heard the noise and looked up from his book, his eyes heavy with fatigue. I stood in the darkness of the doorway, meeting his gaze, feeling a wave of guilt wash over me. "I'm so sorry, I accidentally fell asleep." I stepped closer, crossing the line between light and shadow. "Is it too late to look at the data with you now?" In the dim light, Leo's features softened. He moved his lips, and a small smile appeared in his eyes. "It's not too late." I sat down in my usual spot, thinking that if Leo was staying up this late, the project must not be going well. I quickly turned on my computer and asked him to send me today's file so I could start running the numbers. I couldn't let my nap derail his work. But Leo was acting strange. He looked away, seemingly embarrassed, and after a long pause, he said stiffly, "There's nothing for today." Nothing? Usually, our workflow was that he would find the research papers, and I would replicate the results. But he had probably been sitting here for hours. This wasn't like him at all. Just as I was about to ask more, I froze. I noticed his computer wasn't even on, and he was holding his book upside down. I took a few seconds to process this, and a bold theory began to form in my mind. Could it be that Leo wasn't working late tonight, but was waiting for me? The thought sent a thrill through me. I took a few deep breaths and asked tentatively, "Were you waiting for me?" Leo flinched, unconsciously fiddling with the ring on his hand, as if wrestling with the answer. He sighed, finally admitting, "Yes." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. My mind was a jumble of emotions. We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, I looked up and forced a smile. "I made you wait so long. Let me make it up to you." Leo looked up, a hint of confusion in his eyes. Before he could ask, I grabbed his hand and pulled him toward the rooftop terrace. The whole way, Leo didn't let go of my hand. I was now even more certain of my theory. On the roof, a gentle, warm breeze washed over us. I pointed to the sky and asked, "What's your favorite star?" Leo looked up at the sky, closed his eyes for a moment, and said in a low voice, "Pluto. The planet of death and rebirth." It was an unexpected, yet fitting, answer. In 2006, Pluto was reclassified as a dwarf planet because it didn't meet all the criteria for being a planet. It was cast out of the planetary family, left to continue its long, lonely journey through space. And Leo. I had once seen a picture Lauren showed me of him winning a physics competition. In the photo, he was just a teenager. Though he was still reserved, with only a hint of a smile, his eyes were full of hope and excitement. If it weren't for his family's tragedy, he probably would have become a brilliant physicist, shining brightly in the field he loved. But now, I turned to look at him. Dressed in a suit, he looked nothing like the young boy in the photo. He was a successful businessman, but his eyes, when he looked at the stars, were still filled with a sense of loss and longing. I cleared my throat and said casually, in that case, I like Sharon. Leo froze, his pupils dilating. He turned his head stiffly, his throat working. I held up my fists to represent the two celestial bodies and smiled brightly. You've been waiting for a long time by yourself. How about I make it up to you with a binary system? I paused, leaned in closer, and asked with a grin, are you willing to be tidally locked with me in our solar system? Sharon is Pluto's largest moon. Due to their gravitational pull, the two lonely spheres are forever locked facing each other, becoming the only truly romantic, mutually locked pair in our solar system. Leo's breathing grew heavy, his deep eyes swirling with a storm of emotions. He watched me silently for a long moment, then let out a soft laugh. He took a step forward and slowly pulled me into his arms. The wind carried his voice away, but I still heard him say, it's an astrophysical law. I have to say yes. After getting together with Leo, things were a little awkward at first, even less natural than before. Especially Leo. He would even ask, is this okay? Just to hold my hand. Could I really say no? Or, when he was dropping me off at my internship, he'd see a couple hugging nearby, fall silent for a moment, and then ask nonchalantly, do you want to be tidally locked? It was killing me. The main problem was that he always asked with a completely serious, deadpan expression. Anyone who knew us would think we were a couple. Anyone who didn't would think I was getting a lecture from my boss. Every time I complained to Lauren about it, she would just laugh hysterically and send me a bunch of shipping it reaction memes. But the one thing we were both dying to know was when Leo had started to like me. Every time I asked him, he would dodge the question, his eyes darting away for once. It only made us more curious. The answer, hidden in the past, finally revealed itself one afternoon. Leo was cooking when the doorbell rang. I thought Lauren was finally back and ran to the door excitedly. Surprise! A handsome guy with pale skin, edgy clothes, and silver hair stood there, grinning at me. We stared at each other. The guy's smile faltered for a second when he saw me, but it reappeared almost instantly. That smile. Why did it look so much like Lauren's when she was shipping us? I asked politely, excuse me, can I help you? He was still wearing a goofy, mother-in-law-like grin and rummaging through his backpack for something. I took a closer look. Whoa! A tote bag from the psychiatry department of some hospital. This handsome guy couldn't be a patient, could he? I took a step back. He finally spoke. My name is Dylan. Then he handed me something he'd found in his pocket. My congratulatory gift. For you and Leo. Huh. They knew each other. But that bag. While I was still trying to figure it out, a strong, steady hand reached past me from behind and took the box. Leo's teasing voice sounded behind me. Look what the cat dragged in. He invited him in, adding, with that outfit and that psych ward bag, you nearly scared my girlfriend. Dylan shrugged and gave me an innocent look. I'm not a patient. I'm a psychiatrist. Well, I'll be a psychiatrist. And so fashionable. I quickly said hello. Dylan waved back enthusiastically, then his sharp eyes spotted my ring, and that goofy grin returned. TSK, so that's the ring. This was a new set of rings Leo had bought for us after we got together, replacing his old one. Dylan pointed at Leo, who was walking toward the kitchen. This guy called me in the middle of the night one time, asking if I knew what tidal locking was. I glanced at Leo, who was pretending to be completely absorbed in his cooking, and almost burst out laughing. That must have been the night we confessed. He had seemed so calm. I couldn't believe he'd turned around and called his psychiatrist friend with such a weird question. Dylan continued his accusation. I asked him if he was crazy and needed a prescription, and he just said, figured you wouldn't get it, and hung up. Hung up. I couldn't hold it in any longer and started laughing. It was the kind of thing that would make Dylan wake up in the middle of the night and mutter, is he the one who's crazy? Leo heard me laughing and glanced over, still maintaining his serious composure, which only made me want to laugh more. Dylan went on, and then, one day I was asking for his opinion on something, and he suddenly gets this goofy grin, shoves his hand in the camera, and asks me if I think his ring is nice. I can't. I was going to die laughing. He was always so calm in front of me. When we bought the rings, the only sign of his excitement was a slightly wider smile when we got home. I had no idea he was that happy. Dylan was about to complain some more when Leo called us to dinner. We agreed to debrief on Leo's strange behavior later. At the table, it was clear they hadn't seen each other in a long time. They traded sarcastic jabs, but you could tell they were close friends. I ate my food while getting all the juicy gossip on Leo. Dylan was a treasure trove of stories. He pointed at Leo. When this guy started his company, he was so broke he could barely afford pants. I thought he was going to give up, but then one day he shows up with a design of Pluto and asks me if I think it's cute. I froze. All the little pieces of memory suddenly clicked into place. And then what? I asked urgently. Dylan didn't understand why I was so shocked. He scratched his head. And then he got his act together. Now he can afford pants. Leo cleared his throat, looking a little uncomfortable. Eat your food. You're too loud. Something was up. I quickly pulled my keychain out of my pocket. Before I could even ask, Dylan's eyes lit up. Yeah, that's it. It's a pretty cute design. My mouth opened, but my throat felt tight. I couldn't say a word. So that's what it was. No wonder Leo had become so talkative the first time I showed him my keychain. The person who had been there for me when I was at my lowest was Leo. I turned to look at him. He was silent, but his hand was restlessly twisting his ring. He was nervous. I composed myself and smiled at Dylan, who was happily eating away. Quick, tell me more about when he started his company. After dinner, Dylan left, claiming he had to go chase his wife. As much as I wanted to hear that story, I had more important things to deal with. Distant memories suddenly merged with the man in front of me. Leo had crossed the internet and 6 years of time to be sitting here now, smiling at me gently. I rushed over and hugged him, suddenly feeling like I might cry. You were going through so much back then, and you still had time to encourage me. Leo hugged me back gently, comforting me. It wasn't as bad as Dylan made it sound. I got through it, didn't I? I mumbled into his chest, how did you keep going? Leo's voice, full of laughter, replied, I just kept thinking that there was a girl who was eagerly waiting for me to explain physics problems to her every night. Suddenly, life felt like it had a purpose. Damn it. Suddenly, I didn't want to cry anymore. Back then, I was a dramatic teenager, always posting angsty stuff on that forum and asking the experts some pretty basic questions. To be honest, Leo was the only one who would ever respond to my dumb posts. I sniffled. I must have been so childish back then. Even though Leo was only 2 years older than me, he had seemed so mature and steady back then. I expected him to tease me, but instead, he said seriously, not at all. At a time when I thought I'd never touch physics again, you appeared. The questions you asked weren't hard, but they reminded me of myself when I was just as passionate about it. He paused, looking a little shy, but continued, to be honest, answering your questions was one of the few things I did just for myself back then. And it was also the happiest. Life is so strange. Ever since finding out how we first met, I kept thinking that if I had only known sooner and stayed on that forum, we could have kept in touch. Leo looked up from his computer and asked me a seemingly random question. Do you know about the Magellanic Clouds? Of course, I did. They're one of the few celestial objects you can see with the naked eye, but only from the southern hemisphere. I asked eagerly, why? Are you going to take me to the southern hemisphere to see the stars? Leo thought about it for a moment, seriously considering the logistics. I quickly stopped him, explaining I was just kidding. Leo turned his laptop toward me. I saw a really interesting perspective online recently. I leaned in to look. A stunning NASA image of the small Magellanic Cloud was splashed across the screen, beautiful and brilliant against the blackness of space. Leo smiled. The Magellanic Clouds are in the southern hemisphere. European sailors used them for navigation. As long as they could see them, they knew they would reach their destination safely. In other words, to them, the Magellanic Clouds were the center of their universe. I nodded. Like Polaris, the North Star, for us in the northern hemisphere. Leo looked out the window at the dark sky. But the Magellanic Clouds have no idea how important they are to humans. That was an interesting take. From the clouds' perspective, that was true. They existed simply because the universe made them that way. Whether or not humans saw them or praised them, they would still shine their brilliant light. Wait a minute. I think I was starting to understand what he was getting at. Sure enough, I looked up and saw Leo looking at me, smiling gently. You are my Magellanic Cloud. You guided me, and you didn't even know it. Just like a star doesn't know its own value to humanity. Isn't that normal? He paused, then continued, but whether I was there to admire you or not, you would have still flourished spectacularly in your own space. And in the next darkness, I would find my way back to you. I was speechless for a moment, just looking at him. Then, I held out my hand. Leo walked over from his desk. As he knelt to hug me, I grabbed his tie and pulled him in for a kiss. Leo's eyes widened, but he only hesitated for a second before his hand came up to the back of my head, deepening the sudden kiss. I leaned in close to his slightly reddened ear and whispered, "Now you know. Here's a star's seal of approval as your reward." Leo tugged at his now crooked tie, his breathing ragged, his eyes still flushed with color. His low voice brushed against my ear. "Can I have another reward?" There he went again with that habit of asking for permission before doing anything. I closed my eyes with a helpless smile and kissed the corner of his lips. "Yes, you can." Then I couldn't help but collapse onto his back, laughing. Outside, the North Star shone brightly, lighting the way for people in the northern hemisphere. And we, too, had escaped being pulled into a dark current, free to travel slowly through our own galaxy of dreams.